I wrote a book this year. It's a book I'd wanted to actually read since I was 9. When I was 9, I got given a book called The Bumper Book of Mysteries. And in this, there was a story about JFK and the assassination of JFK. And even as a child of 9, I thought, this isn't right. Something was very wrong here, but I'd like to know what all the facts are and not have anybody tell me who did it and what I should think, but have all the facts so I could work it out for myself. And I've had an interest in JFK since the age of 9. And for the last 20 years, I've, on and off, have been researching it. And so I was writing a book really for my 9-year-old self. And it gave me a chance to, use lots of things which I'd gathered over 20 years. I had notebooks full of interviews with people who had actually been at Dealey Plaza, with Lee Oswald's wife, one of the worst interviews I ever did in my life. And also, has everybody heard of a guy called Eugene Dinking? Yeah. Eugene Dinking was a worked for the US military in Europe. He was a cryptographer, worked in the Signals Intelligence Department. On November the 4th, 1963, he went AWOL. He turned up in the press room, the UN press room in Geneva, to tell all the associated journalists there that later that month, in Dallas, President Kennedy was going to be assassinated. So, over the years, I managed to track down the journalists who were actually there and actually verify this story really happened. And what did he actually say? Because poor old Eugene, when he was eventually captured by the US military police, was placed in a mental institution. And life didn't really go too well for him after that. So I was writing this book, and I knew one of the questions that people would ask me down the pub would be is, why are you wasting your time on something that happened 49 years ago? And luckily, this guy, do you know who this guy is? Yeah. Bill Hicks. And I very luckily, in the early 90s, I interviewed Bill Hicks. When this question was going to come at the pub as to why am I writing a book on something that happened 49 years ago, Bill had given me the answer. Because he said to me, I get so sick of the debunkers. I get even more sick of all these people that say, it doesn't matter. Do you really think the world would be like it is if we'd had 4 more years of JFK? 8 years of Bobby after that. It matters. Those shots still echo. Yeah. And I remember Bill saying that to me. And it does still matter. And I thought, yeah, so I've got the answer. Why am I wasting my time writing a book about something that happened 49 years ago? Actually, there's a much harder question. And it's one that made me really depressed. Because the question is, actually, what have the last 49 years of research on the JFK conspiracy actually achieved? You know where we are today? 9 out of 10 Americans believe it's a conspiracy. 74% of them believe there's an official government cover-up. An official House of Representatives investigation in the 70s said it was likely a conspiracy. And there are 50,000 documents still classified. But where are we for all of that? The JFK murder is entertainment. 49 years on, it's fart gags on the Family Guy, and Stephen King still saying it's Lee Harvey Oswald in best-selling books. We haven't got a situation where there's justice. We know there was foreknowledge of JFK's murder. We know that the forensic evidence doesn't back up Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone. We know there have been official government cover-ups. We know there was a conspiracy. We know all of this. But there's been no justice and no prosecutions. So really, 49 years on, we haven't actually achieved anything, really. Not very much. So what can we say with certainty? Well, what we can say is that we know that there was this conspiracy. But when we look now at JFK, it is what Bill called the Black Mirror. It's become a mystery. You know it's a conspiracy. You know the official version is wrong. But all these years on, we can't say who did it. And it's almost now too far and too unprovable. And it becomes this black mirror where we look at all those facts and what we actually get is a reflection back of our own views. And we have the theories. And there are lots of good theories. LBJ, NASA, CIA, military-industrial complex. There's some really bad theories, aliens, Masons, Jews, the usual suspects that some people like to bring into every conspiracy. But really we look at it and it tells us much more about what we think. You know, we know there's a conspiracy, but we have theories. We don't have justice. And this is kind of my nightmare, that somebody, 2041, is going to be saying, well, where are we on 911? Well, 9 out of 10 Americans believe it was a conspiracy. 74% of them believe their own government may have been involved. You know, there's been a House of Representatives re-investigation of 911, and they said some of those demolitions, they're suspicious. And no prosecutions, no justice, nothing. And that whatever we have in entertainment in 2041 is making fart gags about 911, and there are still the debunking books being peddled as entertainment, and that the conspiracy has been reduced to entertainment. And that Black Mirror really depresses me. That possibility really has depressed me the last few weeks since this book has come out. So I've been thinking, what are the lessons to learn from 49 years of research into JFK and trying to get the truth about JFK? Anybody ever read this book? Anybody know what this book is? It's a book called Farewell to America. It's a book put out in 1968 by the French Secret Service. It's complete misinformation, with a little bit of truth here and there, about who killed Kennedy. Why did they do that? Well, it was effectively, it's a piece of anti-American propaganda, very effective. It also named some Soviet agents and some US agents, destroyed their careers by making that knowledge public. But its real agenda is almost to depress anybody about the state of America. You know, it's a good read, it's an interesting read. There's a lot of what I call pornography of doom put out by people in the conspiracy community. You know what this is? This is the Olympic Park. Anybody remember in the summer, whilst we had people like Ben trying to get out the real story of what's going on at the Olympics, where we were told that, look, if you look at that, you can see that's a Masonic structure. And there was going to be a Masonic-based plot, or a false flag terrorist plot. Do you remember all of this rubbish? And that story gets out, and that story is promoted by people in our community. And what happens? It's like these American preachers that say the end of the world is nigh, and it doesn't happen, and they just move it forward. And they say, well, it's because we exposed it didn't happen. I'll tell you what, I've sat in the rooms, I've sat in COBRA committees with these people. They do not care less about exposure beforehand because I've got a good cover story for afterwards. Eugene Dinkin went before international media and said Kennedy was still going to be killed, and he was still killed. You know, talking about some of this beforehand doesn't stop these things happening. I'm sorry, it doesn't. And these guys were saying to me, you've got to get on board with this. We're going to be proven right. And I was saying, it's your lack of proof that worries me, and that's why I'm not on board with this. And you're disempowering people, and when it doesn't happen, they'll trust you less, and they'll trust everybody else who's trying to tell the truth and trying to expose real conspiracies a lot less. And we've got to say no to this pornography of doom, because that's a form of entertainment. It's game playing, status. I know more than you. I'm going to be able to sell some conference tickets because I've got this great revelation that this is going to happen on the Olympics. All of this rubbish. We've got to not be an audience for that. And we've got to challenge these people. And how do we challenge it? How do we stop this? Facts, not theory. We've got to work from facts. I'm a journalist. I used to be a journalist. I still am a journalist. I'm an author. Facts, facts. Does anybody know what this is a picture of? Yeah. The shooting in France. Really huge in September. Notice how it's dropped out of the papers. You know, it was a really big story. And there seemed to be a bit of an agenda, didn't there? This is a guy who works for various organisations and companies involved in secret satellite programs, who's murdered in France, and there seemed to be a really big agenda to try and push it onto the family, it being a domestic dispute. And then suddenly it goes very quiet. I was contacted by a French news agency to do a little bit of fact-checking, because they'd heard some very interesting things about the person who discovered the bodies, who was an ex-RAF intelligence officer. And I started to look into this case. And I have been told some mind-blowing things. But you know what? I haven't been able to prove them yet. I've heard it from maybe one source. I've heard it from maybe one source and somebody else I'm not really sure of. I can tell you that I'm absolutely convinced that this is a very important story, there's a lot of depth to it, and there's some very, very important things which could potentially come out. But I'm not going to actually sit and I'm not going to rush into anything until I've got facts. There are a lot of theories here. Mossad, the Chinese, MI6. There's a lot of theories, and there's some incredible, potentially incredible things behind this. But you know, it's a hard slog. It's difficult, and it takes a long time to actually prove something to be fact. And I'm not going to rush and add to this misinformation and confusion, because that damages the case, and it damages the credibility of anybody who's trying to establish the truth here. And one of the other big things I've learned from JFK, paperwork matters. If paperwork didn't matter, if all of these documents that they have didn't matter, they wouldn't fight so hard to stop us having access to it. Now, in 1992, an act was passed which said that 25 years on from that act, every JFK document had to be released. There's still 50,000 documents as of today not been released. And a lot of those documents are things which really could break open the case still. Things like, you know, who was actually Oswald working for by let's having a look at his tax records. When this happened, there was a US Department of Defense memo that said, this is great. We'll actually flood all of these guys with so much documents they won't be able to handle it. And we'll put out early some what they call this wonderful phrase, only the military mind or political mind come up with this phrase, good faith distraction material. We'll give them some genuine documents which will distract them from other things. And we can actually turn this to our advantage. And they want to flood us with distraction and paperwork. I say, bring it on. It's two things I've been investigating on and off for years. And one of which is the idea, and it's a true idea, that the TV show The Prisoner was based on a real place during the war where the British kept the spies on our own side we can no longer trust. A place in Scotland called Inverness Lodge. It's a real place, really existed. And the other one is about the two coups that almost happened in this country in the 1970s. Do you know about this? The right-wing cabal, Ross McWhirter, Lord Mountbatten, Aryan Eve. You know, a right-wing cabal to bring about, you know, a coup in this country, almost got there twice. And very strangely, all of the people in this died, quite often in, you know, very violent IRA attacks, right under the noses of the security services. This is the House of Commons car park. The IRA blew up somebody in the House of Commons car park. So it's quite suspicious. On both of these things, on Inverness Lodge, there was a fire, again, a fire, destroyed most of the records. All of the rest of the records are what they call maximum burial, 100 years. I won't get to see them until 2046. I don't actually think I'll probably be alive to see them in 2046. And a lot of the material on the coups and the potential coups in the 70s is still classified. Hard paperwork slog. I work around that. There's a lot of declassified documents, troop movements, correspondence, food requisitions, medical reports. All of that stuff in the paperwork, in the margins, in the stuff which they've lost control of, which they don't actually think is important or anybody is going to look at. I'm starting to find the gems of evidence to actually be able to say, with confidence, with fact, what has happened. And that's not glamorous, and it's bad for the eyes, and it's really sometimes dull, difficult work. But paperwork matters. And if you want to do something, talk to Ian, talk to some of the other people here. There's a lot of paperwork. We need people. And if you can read and you've got some spare time, go through the paperwork, because there is stuff in there that could crack stuff open, that could smash these black mirrors. Because why does this matter? And why it matters to me is this. In every conspiracy, there are always victims. They've stolen our truth. They've stolen our history. And there are people who have died. I don't trust these lot. I don't trust the mainstream media, especially when it's Philip Schofield and it's sitting on the sofa. And I don't trust that guy, and I don't trust the power elites to investigate and to tell us the truth. And I'm really worried that we're going to end up with a lot more black mirrors unless we do that hard slog, those unglamorous jobs of going through the paperwork, going through the corporate bins, working as cleaners, gathering our own intelligence. I think this is the most exciting time in my life to be a truth activist, to be a researcher. The public mood is changing. Hillsborough, Hatgate, the tip of the iceberg, which is Southwell. People don't trust the authorities to investigate themselves anymore. This unaccountableness of investigating yourselves is untenable. The public mood has changed. They really suspect that they've been lied to, and just how much they've been lied to. But we can't expect them to trust us unless we are better than those we are investigating. We've got to say no to what we do as entertainment. We've got to say no to what we do as this pornography of doom. We've always got to stick to facts, not let the theories lead us, let the facts lead us. And we've got to do the hard slog. And if we want to challenge the mainstream media, and if we want to be able to talk to the public, we ourselves have got to be accountable. And so I really do believe, for more than 20 years I've been doing this. This is the best time to be sat in a room like this. I love coming into a room like this with you guys, because you care about the truth as much as me. It's a demented life, Ben will tell you this. There's no glamour in it, there's a lot of hardship, and it is a calling. Journalism is a calling. But actually, we've all got a calling here towards truth. And we can work and we can change, and the public will listen, because the things which have been happening recently, the mood is changing. They know they've been lied to. And I don't actually think the public now trust. They don't trust this man, Cameron, and anybody in that power structure to tell the truth, and they don't trust the mainstream media. If we want to know the truth about Jimmy Savile, Hope Gun Boys Home, and Ted Heath, I don't trust these guys to find out, but I trust any one of you to go away and look at the paperwork and to see whether it's true that Ted Heath did visit that place. And going through the Harbour Master reports, hard slog, when was Ted Heath's boat there? Was Savile and Ted Heath ever there at the same time? To do that hard paperwork slog, we can break these stories, we can crack these black mirrors. It's going to take a lot of hard work, but it does matter. We've got to do it for the victims.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dave.